I'm super excited for this week. We have such an incredible team of practitioners to share with you. And I can really see the community building, like week after week, everybody coming in from all over the world. And speaking with Mac Murphy, I was introduced to Mac through a dear friend. And he put together this beautiful team of collaborators, somatic and spiritual practitioners that are going to take us on a journey and really help us to connect on a deeper level to our relationship to the earth and our environment. So Mac is a Qigong teacher. He works up in Northern California and is deeply connected to the Esalen Institute. If you have been to the Esalen Institute, it's an incredible place. I mean, they've been really working for the last, I think it's like 40 years or so, maybe even, is it 40 years, Mac?
Let's see, it's 2020, so 58 years.
58 years, wow, that's incredible. And if you haven't been to Esalen, you should really check it out. They have so many incredible programs. You know, that deal with a multitude of modalities from the earth stewardship to our own personal work. So we're going to be talking to some of the practitioners from there too. We have Eric Monkhouse, who is a therapist and he's also a sound healer. He's going to be guiding the work with sound healing with the didgeridoo. And we also have Samantha Sweetwater, who is going to be sharing a little bit of work on auto practices and really guiding us deeply into our connection and our relationship with our intention around the earth. And then we also have Ian-Michael, who I'm really excited about talking to. He's been studying eco-resorts and how we work in the environment, and then also with community mental health. So I'm interested to talk to the team today. I'm going to bring in Matt.
Good day, good evening, wherever you are in the world. It's an honor to be here and share with you in this time. Thank you, Joanna, for the invitation and call to action.
Thank you so much for being here, and thank you for putting together this team as well. I think that in times like this, people are looking for tools and ways to really understand and navigate this process that we're going through. And I feel that it's a really important part of our evolution to meet this process. And we also have Ian, let me see if I can.
Yeah, thank you so much for the invitation to be here and to send some good life force energy to all of you.
I'm going to also introduce Samantha, so you can come in so you can meet everybody. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate you offering your time and your wisdom and sharing with the community.
Thank you.
Whereabouts are you tuning in from?
I'm in Mill Valley, California. I'm in a home that is the furthest, it's at the end of a road on the south arm of Mount Tamalpais that is homeland I share with actually all of the facilitators. We are all denizens of Mount Tamalpais.
I want to introduce, where is Eric? Here he is.
Hello.
Hi.
Good to meet you. Nice to hear your English accent. My accent is somewhat diluted after living here for maybe 12, 13 years, but still a Brit at heart.
Wanted to speak a little bit about our body's rhythms and how our body's rhythms are connected to the earth. Also thinking about the circadian rhythm and how our body works with the rhythm of the earth, and really how in this time with unnatural light and being able to stay up late at night and shift working, how that's affecting our body.
Good question. That makes me think about like Taoist principles, like we start with zero, and zero is nothingness, is like the void, it's the empty. It's also the creation. It's like the creative powers of the universe comes from that void, from nothing. And then light emerged into that void, into that nothing as oneness. And that's the number one. And so that's like being in oneness, in a pure acceptance, and everything is just like collective consciousness. And then two is yin and yang. And it's like the meeting of the poles of the masculine and the feminine. And then out of that comes the 10,000 things, or the Tao. It's all the things embodying these core universal principles. So every particle in the universe has an energetic field. Like anything that has atoms and neurons and protons like circulating and relating to one another, they have an energetic and magnetic field. And there's like this concept of a torus. It's like the toroidal field that emanates out of a atom. It emanates out of the center of the earth. You see that?
Oh yeah.
Does everyone see that?
Yeah, I can see it. Perfect.
Yeah. So this is a toroidal field of the human system. And I was just kind of geeking out about this. And so like that torus emanates out of the center of the earth between the North Pole and the South Pole. Also, it emanates out of the human heart. So every one of us has a toroidal field that emanates out of us. And now they're honing in and sharpening their ability to measure this with scientific equipment. But many esoteric traditions have known this and believed this for millennia and beyond, history and herstory. I think it's important to connect that both the earth and the human have this very similar structure of energetics, as well as the galaxies. Our galaxy has a toroidal field that emanates out of its center, and let's say the North Star is the center point of the galaxy. And so from that point, this is like the middle of a donut, and then this massive energetic structure wraps around it. And so stars are moving in these different cycles in this pattern of the torus. There's astronomers have tracked Arcturus, the star, and how it's traveled in these certain elliptical shapes, figure eights, and almost like yin and yang shapes. And so now they're seeing this correlation between like these ancient practices like in Taoism with these cosmic and universal currents. So I think it's really powerful to like bring that consciousness in and to honor how interconnected everything is. Like the torus that emanates out of the human heart and also emanates out of the earth and the galactic structure. It also, like an apple is shaped like a torus. So like, oranges or beans or the nautilus shell, the Fibonacci sequence, like all these layers are involved in this grand design. And it's fascinating. It's exciting, and it's like, oh, okay, makes sense.
I'm obsessed with the whole microcosm, macrocosm, and which is why I'm so interested in the bacterial sense inside our bellies and how we treat like microbes on our body, microbes in the soil, because when it goes as far as it goes out, it also goes in, right? So we have the ability to affect both of these. The way that I see it is, as we stabilize our own frequency, as we stabilize our own torus, we will then have a positive effect on the torus of the earth and going higher up into the galaxy and then lower down into microbial levels as well. So we are this important point within this long scale that actually has choice on the way that we affect ourselves and the things that we do. So by actually choosing to participate in practices like cleansing, breath work, qigong, sound healing, and intentional work, we can affect along this long range of going all the way up into, you know, the mega structures and all the way down into the microstructures as well. And that really excites me. So it's wonderful that you explain this, because it gives people an understanding of how it's all interconnected.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah. You also asked about the circadian rhythm and just understanding how the earth moves in the cycle east to west, and cycling around the axis as the earth travels around the sun, and having, you know, like if we were on a different planet on a different sun, then maybe the numbers would be different. Like maybe the hours of a day would be a different length, or so we have a very specific timetable, and that affects our earth, and that affects our bodies. And depending on where we are on the planet and where we're rooted and accustomed to living, that affects our own circadian rhythm. That's why when we travel somewhere and you get jet lag, it's like it throws off our circadian rhythm. So that's one of the more impactful things about jet lag. In Chinese medicine and Taoist philosophy, they believe that there's a cycle in which each organ in the body regenerates itself. And this is based upon 5-element theory. And so the 5 elements of Chinese medicine are wood, fire, earth, metal, and water. And each element houses 2 to 4 organs. So you'd break that down in a 24-hour cycle. Each organ embodies a 2-hour window in a day. So like from 10 p.m. to 12 a.m., that's when the liver regenerates. And so like it's most optimal for us to go to sleep at 10 a.m. or 10 p.m. But a lot of people stay up late partying, and you know, they're burning the candle at both ends from, you know, 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. So it's like when we disrupt ourselves like that, it disrupts the circadian rhythm. Having exposure to like a screen for hours on end late at night, it also disrupts these different windows of time when our body regenerates. Like the most optimal time to train physically and kind of high intensity workouts would be like from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. in the heat of the day. And also that's when the heart is like is most alive. And so the Taoists would like map out when to sleep and when to be active, when to meditate, when to eat, you know, based on the specific circadian rhythm of the season as well. So there's so many layers. I mean, I could like give a lesson on this, and I want to give some room to my friends. Joanna, you spoke about Schumann resonance, and I imagine Eric knows some stuff about that. So
yeah, thank you. It's great to be here. It's interesting. I've heard from many people that the Earth hums. There's a frequency, 7.83 hertz. Apparently, it is. What does that mean? Yeah. And so that's where the didgeridoo comes in for me, is to be able to play these very deep sounds and to use my breath and to basically go into trance and to dissolve and to somehow merge. If you translate 7.83 hertz into a musical pitch, it's actually B flat. That actual note, that frequency would be, if you imagine a piano and the lowest note, B flat, it'd be actually 2 octaves lower than that on the piano. That's the actual sound that we're not really able to detect it. But if you go up a few octaves, then, you know, we'd find a B flat that actually would, you know, you would be able to hear, and you'd, more importantly, be able to feel, to resonate with.
I could speak to circadian rhythms and biorhythms, and I'll just tell a little story. And so one of my teachers, David Abram, he wrote a book called Spell of the Sensuous and wrote another one called Becoming Animal. His descriptions are very rich and dynamic about what it is to experience the world fully through our senses and the intelligence that the natural world offers to us. One of the things that I read in one of his books was that it takes 3 or 4 years for one's body and one's biorhythm to sync up with the place where you're living. And I noticed, I grew up in Alaska, spent most of my life until 30 there, and we were very close to the Arctic Circle. So the winter was like deep hibernation, like no sunlight, or like very few hours of sunlight in the middle of winter. And it did take me a number of years to get into the rhythm of living in San Francisco in the Bay Area, which is its own funny rhythm, because it's like springtime and then there's like winter in the summer with the fog, and then there's another springtime in the fall. And so, that had its own rhythm, and the plants and the animals, they know that rhythm, and the ecology starts to create patterns of expression based on that rhythm of sun and rain. And so, our human systems right now, our civilizational systems, have created all these insulators where we don't feel that rhythm as much as we used to. And so the invitation is like, really get to know what the rhythms are around you, really find time to tap into the seasonal rhythms and the daily rhythms. So it's been very interesting. The first week I was down in the Diamante Valley here in Costa Rica, like 6 weeks ago, when I really settled in when COVID hit. I was on my screen too much, and like late at night I would like be doing the Corona ticker and like watching how many people were dying and getting all anxious. And that's not really a good way to get in tune with the natural rhythm. So learned that really abruptly. And then I started turning my screen off and really getting into a rhythm. And now I wake up at 6 in the morning very naturally with the cows and chickens and toucans and whatever starts happening at 6 in the morning here. And it just is so luscious and like, it's so beautiful. Rumi talks about like the early breeze at dawn being a keeper of secrets. And the gifts that we give to ourselves when we allow ourselves to listen deeply enough to become part of the rhythm of the place is just exquisite. So it's an invitation, like find the way that you can invite in all the patterns that are around you. And while living in civilizational structures of homes and cars and devices and technology, like look for those invitations of where nature is just beckoning to us and saying, look, I have so much to give. This Mother Earth or Father Earth is so generous when we listen. So that's my invitation, like really get to know your bioregion, really get to know the ecology and the rhythms of the seasons and the days around you. And yeah, and if you want, come down to Costa Rica, because there's really generous life rhythms here.
Excellent. I will take you up on that invitation for sure. As we start to open ourselves up more, we get more sensitive to the rhythms of nature around us, and we learn to tune into the plants, and we learn to expose ourselves. How do we navigate that? How do we tune into one thing and then become more open? If you can speak a little bit about that, I think that would be a wonderful contribution for us.
It's really a mindfulness practice. It's all the different valences of contraction and expansion that we have that are part of our natural rhythm of honing our attention. And it's just like a muscle or a heartbeat or like anything where we're opening and closing all the time on a daily rhythm, on a breath rhythm, on a heart rhythm. And so that same natural intelligence is something we can practice with technology, with our relationships. It's like, okay, like I've engaged enough, and now it's time to bring my attention back to myself or to what's around me. And so becoming more mindful of how gripping the, you know, like our systems of Instagram and Facebook and Google, they're actually designed to capture our attention. It's called the attention economy. And the more they can keep our attention on our screen, the more money they can make off of our attention. So like, it's our responsibility as conscious beings to begin to titrate our attention off of those systems with mindfulness, because that's really like how we keep our sovereignty, and that's how we keep our liberation.
Thank you so much. What was actually coming up in my mind as you were talking was like sovereign awareness, like how we actually like make choices and we don't allow ourselves to get like caught in something and then we're just in a slipstream, but actually keep coming back to ourselves and keep deciding where we're putting our attention. I'm going to bring in Samantha.
It's so good to be here. There's so much to share. It's interesting. I had a very powerful dream last night where I went to a different Gaia. So Gaia is not a singular planet. Gaia is a principle in the universe that manifests blue-green planets that manifest complex life. And I've known that for a long time, and I tend to travel often, sometimes in waking space and sometimes in dream space, to other planets, and I learn a lot about the Gaian principle that way. And I was on another planet last night in my dreams, and a very wise woman named Sophia, we were in a storm at the end of a point, and she reminded me as we walked away from the waves and into a more sheltered place while like feeling all the elements, that humans are here to co-create with the forces of nature. And so I wanted to bring that to us today in this invitation of attention sovereignty and connection and well-being with ourselves. You know, the genius of an attention economy is it's gotten really smart about what human brains like, which is they like being connected to high densities of information. And that's why we get addicted, or particular densities of information. That's why we get addicted to the like button, and we get addicted to different apps, and we get addicted to screens because it triggers very particularly the dopamine receptors in our brain in a way that gets us on a train that's really hard to get off of. And so, you know, you have to get smarter about that, of literally like dopamine sovereignty. And that there's a deep retraining going on, that's a resensitization that we all get to engage today, you know, through this shared space. I truly feel that there's a pathway of resensitization that is fundamental to our next evolutionary leap as a species. That it is in the resensitization of our senses and our extrasensory capacities that we will be able to co-orchestrate the next octave of civilization and technology that is in alignment with our own bodies and with the body of our planet. So like as we empty today, we get to open to that sensing of self and that sensing of world that is also, that starts to open up deeper awareness of the reciprocity of our humanity with the greater field of the world and of nature, which is really to align with our core purpose. It's like a call and response that happens only by virtue of us opening to truly listen, which is science and sacred science at the same time, from the inner seat of perception. It's the restoration of sacred science, starting from the seat of your own subjective experience.
Thank you so much. I really am happy that you're here, and happy that we can share this space. We have